Join Tiki Man and the Viking at the Tulsa Lit Fest Book Fair on April 26th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. 1 week later, we will be where?
At OWFI from April 30th to May 2nd in Oklahoma City. Stay tuned for upcoming interviews from some of the presenters. And as always, read a book. And welcome to Tiki Man and the Viking podcast. He is Tiki Man.
I am H.B. Burlow, the historical crime fiction author of the Ark City Confidential Chronicles and the Wichita Chronicles, not to mention being a darn good baker and sausage maker. He, of course, is the Viking.
I am William Bryan Johnson, author of Hell to Pay, The Dark Cry of Aristid, and Middle-Aged Man in a Trash Can. And we have a guest today.
We have a guest, and we're carrying on with our theme of the speakers at this year's OWFI in Oklahoma City from April 30th to May 2nd. Go ahead with the intro.
And we have Tyler Lenz, a part-time author from Oklahoma and a full-time cog in the machine. He is an author of the post-apocalyptic sci-fi adventures Texas Accelerated and the lit RPG series Non-Player Character. He has a self-published children's book called The Monster Pirate and is the co-author of Carry On, Letters from the Pacific Theater, a collection of letters his grandfather sent home from the Pacific Theater during World War II. His lit RPG series, Non-Player Character, was serialized online, allowing him to slowly build an audience of dedicated readers. Growing up, video games were daily entertainment, but as his life progressed and his family grew, Tyler had less time to enjoy them. Now, instead of immersing himself in playable stories, he writes them himself. He holds a degree in journalism and broadcasting and is the director of marketing and communications for a large trucking company headquartered in OKC. He and his wife, Roxanne, have 2 children and live in Moore, Oklahoma. Welcome, Tyler.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
I'm clearly the old guy in this group here, and I see what you're going to be doing for the presentations at OWFI. Could you, for the benefit of old people like me who may be listening, define lit RPG?
That's actually kind of easy to do.
Okay.
It's some of these other genres where it gets really difficult, but a lit RPG is short for a literary role-playing game. And what that means is you're telling a story in a similar way that video games progress. So your character, your main character, is going to level up. That's a must. If you're not doing that, it's not a lit RPG. There will be skills that you unlock. There's going to be, most importantly, a system in place that dictates all the rules of the world. And that's really the essence of lit RPG, is the system, the rules it creates, and how your character interacts and progresses through those.
Okay, I'm with you. So does that by nature imply that it is a series?
Yeah, not necessarily, but it just, you're right. I think you are right. The nature of these stories is that you want your character to grow and grow and grow and grow and become a mega powerful god. That's kind of how a lot of them roll. And, that's what people want, is a power fantasy. And lit RPG is probably the best way to make that happen.
So
and most lit RPGs are probably, each one is 150,000 words. They're very long. And the longest series out there have, 10, 15 books in them.
Wow.
I don't know if I got that in me. We'll see.
Your book is called Non-Player Character. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I started writing Non-Player Character about 2 years ago. And once I got about 50 chapters done, I decided to start releasing it online on a website called Royal Road, which is where many, many huge lit RPGs start, including Dungeon Crawler Carl, which is something most people have probably heard of. Mm-hmm. And so you build your audience online that way. You release, 3-4 chapters a week. I started that way, and then I just can't write fast enough to keep up. So it's kind of fallen down to, 2 chapters a week. But I've continued to build an audience, over the course of a year or two. And surprisingly, what people used to think is that if you release something online, you're never going to get published because it's already out there. But now there's publishers out there that are just eager for something that's like proven itself in the wild, Right. And so when I finished my first book, I put an inquiry into Podium Entertainment, which is a publisher who I love. They have a lot of multiple New York Times bestsellers. Um, and they just produce really high quality content. And they also are not afraid to try these weird genres. And I wanted my book to be an audiobook published by Podium. And so I sent it to them. I said, hey, I have, about 1,000 followers here. I got 200,000 pages that have been read of this book. I have a previous series that's been semi-successful. What do you think? And believe it or not, I heard back from them within a week and signed a deal 2 weeks later after that.
Whoa. Okay.
Um, it, yeah, that was the very first time I've ever sent a manuscript to a publisher. Everything else before that, I just didn't even want to deal with it and self-publish. So I think it's a miracle, but I also think it's a testament that, you know, I'm the guy that always sat in the audience watching all these other people who are published, telling us how they did it. And now I have that opportunity. And I think it's an illustration that this can happen for anyone. Just put in the work. Mhm.
How long are your chapters on something like that?
So that's a great question. And it has to be probably 1,500 words minimum,
Okay.
no more than 4,000 words, because it's kind of dangerous to write a 5,000 word chapter, because every time you release a chapter when you're serializing your work, that one chapter release is an opportunity to gain new followers. And if you're writing 5,000 word chapters, you're cutting your opportunity to get new followers in half.
Right.
So, kind of by the nature of serialized fiction, you keep them short, you keep them sweet, and you keep them interesting every time. Like something has to be happening. You can't have any just introspective chapters. There's got to be progress.
Do you leave a chapter on kind of a cliffhanger in order to draw them in? I mean, because from my perspective, writing historical crime fiction, I would do that. What do you do to end a chapter to make sure they come back?
Absolutely. Cliffhangers are a must, really, but not every
Okay.
time. People will get annoyed, but you ended on a really strong note, or a cliffhanger. And that's really the only two options you have. Like it has to leave them wanting more so that they're going to
Hmm.
wait a couple days for your next chapter to release.
Excellent.
How are you marketing something like that? Is it mainly social
So
media or
So there's some options on Royal Road. You can run an ad for about $100. Actually, for $50, you can run an ad, and you'll get a ton, like 100,000 impressions. Maybe you'll probably get 3% click rate on that, and maybe 10% of those people who click on it actually stick to it and read it. But out of 100,000 impressions, that's you're getting 50, 100 new followers,
Right.
and that what matters on Royal Road is making something called Rising Stars, which is essentially the front page of the website. Every time you release your chapter, you're on the front page briefly, but in about 5 minutes, you're bumped
Hmm.
off because so many people are doing this right now.
Whoa. Oh.
Um, oh, I mean, it moves so fast. I've been up for less than a minute before on the front
wow?
page, and that's a line of 10 different books that are releasing around the same time. So you just bump down, 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 down until you're off. But Rising Stars is like another column on the other side. And whether on your mobile app or desktop, whatever, you'll see these two different categories. And so your goal is to make Rising Stars. And if you do that, you're going to gain a lot of followers. And so to get there, you need to advertise, you need to promote a little bit on social media. I found a community on Reddit. You go into Discord servers, but the number one thing to do is to reach out to other successful authors on Royal Road and do something called a shout out swap, where at the end of their chapter, they'll put a shout out to your book and you do the same for
Oh.
theirs. And
Okay.
so you help each other build up. And so there's this really vibrant community on there of people helping each other. And if you time all that right and you actually have content people want to read, then you might make that Rising Stars list. And that's really where my story grew. Is I did make that list. I made it fairly high up, not number one, but good enough. And that's really the key to success, in my opinion.
That's
Can you
awesome.
talk about your writing process? I mean, you're married, you've got kids, you got a
Yeah.
full-time job, and you're trying to get content out on a regular basis, as opposed to me, I'll write until the book is ready and go to my editor. What is your writing process, your schedule like?
hmm So I write by the seat of my pants. I know how it starts. and I kind of have an idea on how it ends, but I'm along for the ride, the same as the readers as I write. I do not have an outline,
Thank
which is
God.
crazy. Um, Especially with lit RPG because there's so many skills and things you have to keep track of. So as I build it, I build maybe a spreadsheet next to me being like, okay, he unlocked this at level 10. Um, and so, yeah, you just have to keep plugging away. Sorry, what was the question? I got
Well, but
distracted.
your writing process, what's your schedule like? How do you
Yes,
fit
yes.
everything in?
It's so hard. I work full time. I come home, I hang out with the kids, I help my wife make dinner, we want to hang out, watch a show, and then maybe about 10 o'clock at night when she goes to bed, it's my turn. And so I get until midnight really to write, and I can maybe get 1,000 words out, a little bit more.
Good.
And so perhaps every 2 or 3 days I can produce a chapter, but life gets in the way. So that doesn't always happen.
So
And that's why I release a lot slower than most people who do serialized fiction. They're doing 3 a week minimum,
Hmm.
and I'm
oof,
doing two.
oof.
It's just so difficult. So it takes me, 6, 8 months to write a 125,000 word book. But somehow I manage. You just have to keep plugging away, try to write every day, even if you can't edit something.
Have you found yourself writing yourself into a circle at any point and then going, oh, or writing
Yeah,
yourself into a corner and go, oh no, I got to back this up somewhere?
yeah, absolutely. So, well, book one is currently in audiobook production. It's about to be released, and my contract said I have to have book two by March, excuse me, by April, and April's really close.
Mhm.
And so I really just finished it yesterday.
Congratulations.
Um, yeah, yeah, and
Great.
it's a lot to get it done in time, but you just pull through, keep writing, and hopefully the kids won't bother me too much on the weekends because I've had to use every hour of the weekend to finish this. But it's worked out great. Mhm.
Excellent.
Now, one of
And you
the
go on.
oh, good. No, I was going to say one of the sessions you're going to be doing at OWFI is about writing serialized fiction.
Mhm.
In your mind, is lit RPG the only genre or one of the fewer genres that holds up to serialized fiction well? Or in this day and age, I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, Conan Doyle did that with Sherlock Holmes, but we're talking 100 plus years later. Do other genres or would other genres hold up well under
Mhm.
serialized fiction?
I don't think so, honestly. Some romance, fantasy stuff combined can work on a different website, which I'll talk about in my session called Wattpad, but that is a primarily female audience and they're there for romance. And they do all that in serialized format, and many people are very, very successful. On Royal Road, if you're not writing lit RPG progression, isekai, Portal Fantasies, System Apocalypse, which I know I'm speaking gibberish, things like that fit this specific genre, that fit the audience, which is primarily young men who are going on Royal Road and reading it, who like video games, then you're not going to find success. Serialized fiction was done through newspapers and magazines back in the day. Sci-fi writers who just do like hardcore sci-fi could really build an audience with that. And it can still be done on Royal Road. I actually released my first book of Texas Accelerated, which is a post-apocalyptic sci-fi on
Right.
Royal Road. And, I managed to make the rising stars of the sci-fi genre, but not the main page of Rising Stars. And so it it works, but it's not going to work as well. So it depends on what you want. If you just want to go out there and write and have people provide you feedback to see if people actually like what you're doing, then I would encourage anyone to start releasing their work online.
Okay.
And maybe you can build a following. Maybe you got 100 followers, and maybe 10 of them want to be on your patron. And so you can actually make money writing serialized fiction. A lot of people make thousands and thousands of dollars a month doing it, but the primary way to do it is to write progression lit RPG.
Right. Right.
So do
Mhm.
you do specials for people that, hey, if you pay or you sign up for a subscription, I'll send this out to you, a week before or
Yeah, so that's how it works. And when I very first started and I had a big backlog of chapters, I had a Patreon. And surprisingly, I actually had some followers, that were willing to pay me $5 for me to release 10 chapters ahead of schedule. So
Hmm.
they were reading 10 chapters ahead, and that's kind of the standard. But, then reality caught up to me and I couldn't quite keep up. And so it's something I did let fall to the wayside, but I was making $50 for doing nothing,
Yeah.
doing something I was already doing. And, in my session, I'm going to point out authors who only have 1,000 followers and are making $400 a month on Patreon because they stuck it up. They do three every week, and they do 20 chapters ahead. Maybe they have another story they're working on that people get sneak peeks of. They have different tiers. So maybe they have a tier that's 30 chapters ahead. You almost get the whole book by paying. And so that's, we had an earlier question about, is this a series? Are lit RPGs always a series? They almost are, because people who do lit RPG want to do this Patreon path and they want that to last for years. And so you have to write, 1 million words. And so it's going to be, 10 different books, or a lot more than that, maybe. And it's a lot of people have found success. I found moderate success, and then I just couldn't keep up with it. But hey, I'm super happy that I got a publishing deal I was always looking for. They signed me for 3 books, get advances and everything. It's a dream come true.
The end justifies the
Hmm.
means, really,
And
right?
one of the things we talk about a lot is when I did a Harvester Arts program on kind of building your business, they always talked about legs at the table and what can you do to support your business. And it sounds like a great idea. I mean, you have that income stream coming in, you're creating your books, then you're putting them out to publish. And so, I mean, you have that money coming in while you're creating to kind of support that.
Exactly. I mean, I think most authors should be, I mean, maybe not most, for the authors who think they can keep up with it, they should do it because you're going to double what you're making. These people on Patreon are still making $1,000 on Patreon a month, and then they're making $2,000 a month from book sales that the general, audience is reading. And a lot of them, most all of them go on Kindle Unlimited. Most all of them try to do an audiobook because lit RPG is just exploding. So there's a lot of potential income out there for authors.
Yeah.
Now,
I was going to ask
did you
also
mention that
about
you
the
did an
audio.
audiobook? Yeah.
Yeah, the audio
No,
portion of that, is that fairly common? Is it a different service, or does the website also have audio versions?
so the website, they have like an AI that'll read audio
Hmm.
version
Oh,
of the
yeah.
text to you. It's terrible. I can't stomach it. When I read audiobooks, I want super high quality productions. I want a talented voice actor to do different voices for each character, and I want it to be consistent. And I've actually financed my own audiobooks for Texas Accelerated.
Hmm.
And, that's a huge chunk of change. We're talking over $2,000 for 8 hours of audio with an actual talented, narrator. And so through Podium Entertainment, they're paying me and they're paying for a very skilled audio narrator. They're
Whoa.
doing the entire production. They're going to do promotions. Um, and so it's a huge boost. Even if they weren't going to give me an advance, I would have taken that deal immediately. I'll get less royalties in the long run. But frankly, if we're honest, most people who pay for an audiobook are lucky to make their money back.
Right.
And so I've already done that. So I'm very happy.
So tell us a little bit about the post-apocalyptic uh, sci-fi that you have. It was in Texas, right?
Yeah,
Texas
yeah. So
Accelerated.
Texas
Yeah.
Accelerated. So it's kind of I isekai a whole entire town, um, sent him to another world.
Uh-huh.
I had this, something I've always loved. I've loved Stephen King. And by the way, Podium published Stephen King's last book.
Huh.
Oh,
And so that's why I'm really excited to be with them. But I love Under the Dome. I know it's cheesy and weird, but I just love Under the Dome. And I was like, I want to Under the Dome my own story. How do I do that? I want to have a town that has to survive, in terrible circumstances and build a story from that. And that's where it all started. And then I knew about some history in Waxahachie, Texas, and it's not a big spoiler, but they were back in the 90s building a particle accelerator throughout Ellis County. It was going to be 87 miles wide. They built 30 miles of it underground, these tunnels, and then Congress, and it was during the Clinton administration, they cut off funding. And
Mhm.
so it just was never finished. And it's something I knew about. I'm like, wait a second, I can use that to separate my town. And so I sent them to the Ice Age through some experiment, some fake science.
Uh,
And then I just wanted to use it as a platform to put this town in a Pleistocene world where they're fighting saber-toothed tigers, there's woolly mammoths everywhere,
that's
and they
cool.
just have to survive. And it's just a really fun concept. And that series is it's not dreary, it's not dark at all. I not like you. I know you can do dark stuff. I
Uh,
can't. And so it's real lighthearted. It's real fun, even though, I mean, obviously people are dying every day.
yeah,
But,
yeah.
but I don't focus on that. I focus on the fighting the saber-tooth tigers.
That's
Yeah.
That's
very
awesome.
cool.
I love the
Yeah.
idea of a particle accelerator. One time I was totally taken off kilter by an article reading about the Large Hadron Collider, and they had said that it had created a miniature black hole. And
Hmm.
I'm just like, I knew that was going to happen. And then I started looking at the date, and it was April 1st. I'm like, damn it! I totally got taken with that article.
There's a lot of weird stuff with the Large Hadron Collider.
Mhm.
It's there's some creepy stories associated with it. It's super fun. It's
Why don't
actually
you
a very rich source for inspiration.
That's
Hmm.
fun.
why don't you shift gears and tell us about the nonfiction book, Carry On? That sounded fascinating to me.
Yeah, so that's primarily my mother's work, but she needed some help, formatting, editing, putting it all together. So what she discovered in an attic was all my grandfather's letters that he had sent home to his parents during World War II when he was in the Pacific. And we're talking 100 different letters or more, along with pictures. And so she began the long process of transcribing them because his handwriting is very, very hard to read. And so she transcribed all those. And then we went through and did a lot of research, to find out where he was on this day, what was happening
Mm.
in the Pacific. And
Oh,
because
wow.
he was not allowed to tell his parents where he was or what he was doing. And he did that though, and all that part is exacto knifed out. It's redacted. So we have these letters that look like they're shredded because the
Oh, no.
censors would go through and
Hmm.
cut everything out. And we've included some examples of those in this book. And it's phenomenal. It's very, very interesting, especially because you see this young guy who was 18 years old when he went. And then by the time he was so gung ho, he loved the country. By the time it ended, he had a lower opinion. I think his patriotism had diminished quite a bit, especially since they forced him to stay after the end of the war to help rebuild, because he knew
Oh,
how to drive a tractor. So he had to spend a whole another year there. And so that last year of letters is just him being very grumpy. But it's really great. And you see, he's always writing, he writes letters to my grandmother as well, because they weren't married yet, talking about how he can't wait to be back. But then, he hadn't heard from her for a month. And so he's like, I guess we're done now if you don't want to write to me. And it just, it's an 18-year-old who's going through such a traumatic experience. But when he writes to his parents, he's always so chipper about it. And we look at one letter and, he's like, hey, mom and dad, how are you doing? How's the feed store? Is dad doing well? Me and the boys are doing fine today. And then we look and we see, well, yesterday or, the day before was the Battle of Iwo Jima and, or Guadalcanal, actually. Yeah, he was in Guadalcanal and he wrote a letter a couple days after and you would never know. It's super interesting. And so we add that context before the letters be like, this is what happened, this is where he was, this is the battle he fought in. And now here's the letter after it where you can barely tell.
My
Mhm.
goodness, my goodness. It's a snapshot of a time period that I don't think a lot of people are aware of, other than from what they see in the movies. This is like the real, I hate the cliche, the real slice of life. It's real,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah, it's crazy. And there's some parts in it that are a little rough. Talking about how much he wishes his dad was there to help him go hunting with him, and some innuendo like that. But it's not a graphic. The letters aren't graphic in any way because he doesn't want to scare his parents.
Wow. Wow,
Mhm.
amazing.
All right. You have two different presentations you're doing at OWFI this year.
We got the serialized
Uh-huh.
one, which we talked about, but you're
Lit
also doing one.
RPG, progression, and isekai, the fantasy boom you might be missing, and serialized fiction, how to build an audience chapter by chapter.
Absolutely. And yeah, so in the first one, lit RPG, progression, and isekai, I'm just going to define these genres because I
Sure.
think a lot of people actually aren't even aware of them. And so I want to give them a clear definition of these genres, and then I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty details. I'm going to be talking about leveling up stats, strength, charisma, what do they do? Can you have a book that doesn't have that? Because my lit RPG, I can't keep track of all this. And so I axed all the skills.
Hmm.
Mine's supposed to be immersive, and so there's no skills, like you are what you are, but you grow stronger, you unlock new abilities, new talents, you have gear that you can equip that gives you special abilities. Maybe you get some boots that allow you to fly or hover, things like that.
Hmm.
And then I'm going to talk about how progression relates to that, because lit RPG is progression. Progression is not necessarily lit RPG. A lot of people will use an isekai, or a portal, or you die, you appear in another world. That's isekai, to get you into this lit RPG world. But it doesn't have to go into a lit RPG world. You could go somewhere else. You could Alice in Wonderland it and go down the rabbit hole, and now you're in this whole new fantasy realm. And so I want to get into the details about those. I'm going to give people the rules on how they work, and what qualifies as what. And then for serialized fiction, it's going to be just sharing a lot of my own story, my success. I'm going to talk about the multiple different websites that are available and what genres people write on those. Some are made for fan fiction, some are made for romance, and some are made for sci-fi lit RPG stuff. And I'm going to tell you what the best one is. I'm going to tell you how, what your release schedule should be like. You got to front load it. You want to build your audience quickly so that you can hit the algorithm. It's all about beating these algorithms
Hmm.
so that you're appearing over everyone else. And then I'm also going to talk about how you can monetize that audience, or, as I did, leverage that audience to get
Right.
yourself a publishing deal. Mhm.
Okay. And
It's
progression or progressive progression fantasy. And that's essentially a character that's kind of starting out and growing up to become this super being or hero.
Exactly, exactly. It's I would use Harry Potter as an example, except
Okay.
each year Harry Potter starts killing more and more people and getting exponentially more powerful. Because in Harry Potter he learns new spells. It's not progression, but if he becomes the most powerful in his class, people are fighting each other, there's competition, that's what makes progression. But there's so many different avenues in which you can write a progression novel, so many different stories available to you. But the conceit is you start out as nothing and you grow into something powerful, and you bring the leader along for the ride.
Well,
Excellent.
after all the years I've been going to OWFI, I can tell you something. This is going to be unique, and a lot of people, especially the fantasy writers, are going to be really engaged with you in regard to what you're going to present. But as we've also discovered, when presenters interview other presenters, the biggest fear we have is like, oh, great, they're going to put us across from each other. That'll be
Mhm.
fantastic.
Well, and that's what the evening's for.
Yeah.
Ah, ah,
Sit
ah.
around
I have
during
no
happy hour.
I've got no fear of that, because I don't know. I see myself as just another member of the audience who has the opportunity to share their unique story. And
Exactly.
so, I'm just so thrilled. Like when they because I just put it out there, I'm like, hey, this is stuff I know and I know it really well. Let me come share it. And when they said yes, I was so thrilled, and I'm very excited.
No, we're looking forward to hearing both those sessions. They sound pretty good. So,
Mhm.
Absolutely, absolutely.
and we're looking forward to OWFI as well. We've got a handful of things we're going to be presenting. I'm going to be doing one on folklore and mythology and writing. We've got one together doing platforms, and then you have HB.
Dialogue. I'll be doing dialogue, the lyricism of dialogue, which will actually be almost performance related. Brian will not be doing those pieces that include women because he just doesn't sound good as a woman.
Yeah, I'll
That's
bring
all
the
we'll say.
helium.
Well, they better not schedule them at the same time. So
Exactly.
Well,
I
hey,
can do
listen,
both.
we could try our best. I don't know what influence we have, but this is
Yeah.
great. We're looking forward to meeting you, and this will be out in advance of OWFI for people to get excited and listen to. Obviously, you'll include all of your lovely links so we can put them at the end of the podcast. But yeah, this will be great. I think you'll have an enjoyable time as a presenter and then as an audience member yourself. Uh, they're engaging. They invite people. They make it. They make it a family now. Maybe the Cutter family from Kansas, or maybe the Manson family, but they make it feel like a family.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't wait.
Hopefully not that many skeletons in the closet, but we'll find out.
We'll find out. We'll find out. And of course, we always end every episode with the same line, the same comment, which is
Read a book.
read a book.
Absolutely. Every day.
Absolutely, indeed.
Tyler,
Thanks for
we
joining us,
appreciate
Tyler.
you for coming out.
You've been great, man.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, gentlemen.
And
Take
we'll
care,
talk
then.
to you soon. Tiki Man and the Viking Podcast brought to you by Rumination of Thunder Media. The following intro and outro music was used for this media project. The music Find Them by Alexander Nakrata. Free download from filmmusic.io. License Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International.